And it is about opening, it still holds true, but there's an additional layer that I want to lay on top, because honoring is also really about creativity. And Elizabeth Gilbert, one of my favorite authors, of Eat, Pray, Love, I say that a lot to my favorite authors, once spoke about the courage and fortitude it takes for someone to walk the creative path. She spoke in 2008 at the Merrill Auditorium, maybe many of you saw her. But the talk that I'm referring to is her TED Talk. If you go to TED.com and Google her name with creativity, you will see this. And I'm sure many of you know this story. It's been a while. It's made the rounds. And it's very popular, but here's the gist of it. Liz, as I like to call her, I pretend we're friends. I want to borrow her toll language from the video. Liz was approached, after she wrote the book, Eat, Pray, Love, she was approached by a whole bunch of people who were fraught with concern for her. And they approached her at book signings and different speaking engagements and said, "Aren't you worried you will never ever write anything that's that good again?" And she thought, "Oh my God, I think I am." And so rather than fall into a pit of despair and depression, she did a little research, got herself busy, did a little research around this notion of genius, this source of creativity that all artists crave and that they call forth inside themselves. And it was originally thought, she discovered, to be something that sort of moved through you. It visited you like a guest. It knocked at your door, asked for permission to come in, and if you opened the door and said, "Come right in," it moved into you, and it moved through you, and then it moved out you. So it was a fluid sort of thing. So in this way, people are like portals, which creativity found an outlet for and ultimately an expression. But at some point in our long and drawn-out history, this shifted, and this idea of genius shifted to believe that people were geniuses. It no longer was this energy that sort of moved through you. You were born with it, and you had it forever. And so someone had it and someone else didn't. And so people were born with genius in them and it stayed. And she essentially calls bullshit on this whole notion of genius living in people. And she said, if we just keep it flowing and keep it moving through, it has much less wear and tear on the human psyche. So she invited us all to see it in that way. And in doing her research on this topic, she tells the story of this woman who was a poet, and she used to work in the fields. And she used to work in the fields, and she said she would hear a poem coming from across the field, and it sounded like a freight train. And when she heard that song, or when she heard that sound, which was unmistakable in her mind, her job was to throw down the hoe and run like a bat out of hell to her cabin, where there was a stack of paper and a pen. And if she got to that cabin, before the freight train sound, before the poem came up and caught her and moved through her and escaped, she could capture the poem, and the poem flowed out of her like water. And once, the same poet tells a story of how she was in the field working, she heard the freight train coming, she threw down her hoe, but she just couldn't get on it fast enough, and the poem caught her before she got to the cabin. She got to the cabin, and she reached out and she grabbed the tail of the energy, and she brought it back into her, and that poem came out in reverse, beginning with the end and ending with the beginning. It's a very cool story.